Hey everybody, it's John King. It is Friday, the 12th of April. You have 3 days left before the deadline to file your taxes, and you have 17 days left until the deadline to sign up for Dream for All. So I want to give you a quick update on what's been happening. This has been a crazy week in the markets, and it is not a good sign. Not a good sign if you're hoping for lower interest rates. Not a good sign if you are trying to buy a home right now and secure a low interest rate. And not a good sign if you're counting on interest rates dropping significantly this year. So here's what's going on. On Wednesday, we got the CPI, Consumer Price Index. That is the important number that the Fed looks at every single month to say where is inflation. Okay, so CPI is the index of what consumers are paying for goods and services. Now there's a different index called the PPI, which is the Producer Price Index, which is how much the people who manufacture their goods are increasing the prices of the goods they're creating, not what the retailer is selling it for. Two different markets, right? You have Sony that makes a TV, and Sony sells the TV to Best Buy. Best Buy sells the TV to you. The price that Sony charges to Best Buy, that's the Producer Price Index. That's the price the producer of the goods is increasing the cost of the goods. Now, typically, if the producer price goes up this month, the consumer price has to go up next month. Why? Well, because of the fact that if Best Buy is having to pay more to get the TV from Sony, Best Buy's got to charge even more on the TV. And they figure, hey, if I'm going to have to raise it at $10 because Sony has added $10, I'm actually going to raise it by 20 because I'd like to make a little bit more money too. And so producer price index going up leads to consumer price index going up. Wednesday was the consumer price index. That came out. That inflation report was horrible news, like really bad news. It was higher than expected, and it confirmed for 3 months in a row that inflation is not gone. As a matter of fact, inflation is, in the eyes of the Fed, being persistent. And I'm going to share with you a chart really quickly here that is going to show you what I mean by that. So this chart, and let's see if I can zoom into this guy a little bit more. Maybe not that much. All right, fine. This will work. All right, so this chart shows what the inflation index has been over the last, well, let's see what timeline we're looking at here. This goes back to 2004. So, man. So we're talking about a long time. And we had deflation back in 2008, 2009, where prices dropped. That's rare. Rarely do prices fall. But typically, we're staying around 1% to 2%. What we saw was for a long time, we were really around the 1% to 2% range in the teens, in the 2010 to 2020 range. And then we had inflation fall because of COVID, and it's been going up and up and up ever since then. And so we saw it go up, and we saw the peak, which we hit about 2 years ago. June of 2022, we hit the peak of 9.1%. It's been coming down since then, but the Fed wants it back in these numbers. The Fed wants it back below 2% inflation. And we're stuck right now at around 3. So we hit 3 in June of last year, popped up to 3.7. Then we hit, let's scooch to the right here a little bit, 3.1, January 3.1, February 3.2, March 3.5. So there's worries. We thought that the numbers were going to continue going down. They've been staying flat around 3. The Fed wants to see them flat around 2. So that is bad news. So what happened? On Wednesday, rates shot up. So right here, you are seeing that on April 9th, the average interest rate, this is a very misleading number, but the average interest rate on Wednesday was 7.05%. And then Tuesday on the 9th. Then on the 10th, the average interest rate jumped up to 7.35, a 0.25% increase in 1 day. That doesn't happen very often. We saw a huge drop here. We were on October 31st, and last year, and we were at 7.89%, and literally 3 days later on November 3rd, and we're at 7.39. That was 0.5% in a day. I'd like to see more days like that. Here is a day, December 12th. We had average rate of 7.08, and it fell by December 14th to 6.61. So significant drop in interest rates, but now we're seeing some big bumps up, and another big bump up. The good news is yesterday, the producer price index came out and it was lower. And that means that Sony isn't charging as much of an increase to Best Buy. And so we can expect that maybe consumer prices are going to soften as well. And that brought rates down a little bit. But the average rate right now had popped up to 7.37 yesterday yesterday. And now it's down to 7.31. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it depends on where you're getting your loan from. It depends on what type of loan that you're doing. As an example, Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage, one of the biggest lenders in the nation, they are quoting right now, and they're on the higher end, they are quoting right now for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 7.375. But what nobody ever pays attention to is the legal disclosures. I'm going to make this a lot bigger so you can see this better. These legal disclosures down on the bottom are the key. And so what it says right here is an interest rate of 7.375 is for the cost of almost 2 points or 2% of your loan amount that you're paying in fee to get that interest rate. And that's based on a 20% down payment. So depending upon your situation, it assumes, by the way, somewhere on here, they put their assumption of credit score. Assumption is credit score is 720. So if you don't have a 720 credit score, or you're not putting 20% down, you're paying even more than that. Now, if you have great credit, you're putting a bigger down payment, you're paying less. Now, this is not my interest rates. This is where Quicken is at right now. We're typically better than where they are on these numbers. The reality is, you're welcome, Billy. By the way, I know I owe you some numbers this afternoon, Billy. I'll be getting those to you so you can go shopping this weekend. All right. So the reality is, by the way, I should say you're welcome, Billy. Billy just had a nice comment. So you're very welcome for that. All right. So the reality is everybody's interest rate is going to be different. Now, for a lot of you who are following me, you are interested in the Dream for All program. The Dream for All interest rates have gone up as well. Now, we don't worry about that until it's time to lock in your loan. But what we're seeing is that for the last month, we've been bouncing between 6.25 at the best case, 6.5 to 6.75 on average. We're now at square into 7%. So the interest rate for that type of loan for Dream for All has gone up for CalHFA to a 7% interest rate. What does this all mean? Look, it really means that we're not out of the woods. Everybody had thought the Fed was going to lower interest rates starting in June. Because of this week's changes to the inflation report, now they're saying maybe it's not going to happen until September, and maybe the Fed's not going to lower rates at all. Now, you saw rates fall, and I want to make it really clear. I'm going to go back to one of these charts really quickly that I was showing you. Right here. We saw interest rates fall significantly from October 19th all the way down here to December 14th. So we saw a significant drop in interest rates during that timeline. Okay. Can I make a red one? Yep, cool. So you can see better. All right. So we saw rates drop significantly during that timeline. And the Fed didn't change their rate at all. The Fed funds rate, matter of fact, I don't know if I can put it in here. Is Fed funds rate one of my options? It is not. Anyway, the Fed's funds rate has not changed at all. So people think the Federal Reserve controls mortgage rates. They don't. The mortgage industry is a bond. It is traded. As a matter of fact, it has to do a lot with the 10-year Treasury and where the 10-year Treasury goes. And so this is kind of the 10-year Treasury. I'll make it simpler and make it into a line. The 10-year Treasury compared with mortgage rates. And you see the orange line is mortgage rates. The blue line is the 10-year Treasury. So as the 10-year Treasury goes up and down, mortgage rates move with them. That's a better, it doesn't control, they correlate, they don't control. But the 10-year Treasury is something the government does have influence on. The government controls the federal funds rate, but the Fed funds rate does not control mortgages. But there's a really tight leash behind the 10-year Treasury and mortgage rates. And you see that exemplified in this chart. The direction the blue line, the 10-year Treasury goes, the same direction follows behind with the orange line. So that's what we're really watching, and what we're dealing with is a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty around, are we going to hit a soft landing? Are we going to have a recession? First of all, what is a soft landing? It means that we can get out of an inflationary period without hitting a recession. A recession means a bunch of people lose their jobs, okay? And we don't want that. Nobody wants to have a recession where businesses have to cut back so much that a lot of the population loses their jobs. And so the ideal situation is the Fed gives us a soft landing. In other words, the Fed is able to bring inflation down, slow down the economy without slowing it down so much that we overcorrect and end up in a recession. And it's been pointing towards a soft landing, but there's a little bit of concern that maybe the plane's taken off again. Maybe the fact is that inflation is not yet under control, which is what happened in the 1970s. The problem in the 1970s is the Fed was overreacting, and the Fed was quickly changing interest rates and changing their Fed funds rate because they thought they solved the problem with inflation. I talked about this a lot last week. I'm not going to go too deep into it this week. Here's the moral of the story. We're not out of the woods. For those of you who are thinking about buying a home right now, the numbers are the numbers, and you almost have to look at it saying, hey, as rates move up, fewer people are willing to buy. And if I'm courageous in a time of fear of other people, I can get a deal on a home. And if you get a deal, you lock in that lower price. For those of you who are looking at Dream for All and you're getting your stuff submitted, I have a couple of thoughts for you. First of all, Monday night, I have another webinar on my Dream for All channel that is talking all about what's happening with Dream for All. Guys, we have just a little over 2 weeks left. So if you are waiting, if you're thinking, if you're preparing your paperwork, you need to get started. You need to click this QR code right up here and you need to submit your application. We're getting down to crunch time. I grew up in a household where my dad was a tax preparer. So literally, I remember April 12th every single year, not that day, but this time of the season where my dad is coming down to crunch time of April 15th is the deadline. And people didn't give him their taxes yet. And he's trying to reach them saying, hey, did you file with somebody else? Are you still trying to file, or are we going to put you on extension? And he only has so much time left to make that happen. And I'm having a bit of deja vu. I'm having a bit of PTSD because I was an indentured servant. My parents was raised in an era where, hey, you're a child, you're here to help us. So I would help my dad with taxes every single year during tax season. The good news is that taught me a lot about taxes and it helps me in my industry and my career right now. The other side of that coin is I was very, very involved in those struggles of getting people to, hey, there is a deadline. You have to file your taxes by April 15th, and you have not given me the information, and you cannot give it to me the morning of April 15th and expect I'm going to file it that night. I kind of feel that way right now for a deadline on Dream for All for April 29th. I feel that way in that I've got a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm kind of getting my paperwork together. Look, we're going to have a crunch at the end. You don't want to be in a position where you're hoping we can get it done. You need to get your information in to us now. I'm going to talk in way more detail about this Monday night, 7 o'clock Monday night. If you're interested in Dream for All, if you're in the process right now, join me. I'm going to be sharing information, answering a lot of questions. I'm going to let you all go right now. Hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful weekend. And I look forward to seeing those of you that want to join us about Dream for All Monday night at 7 on my YouTube channel. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Let's do the rain dance for lower interest rates, lower inflation, and maybe have a jobs report not so strong the first Friday in May. That's going to be the next real big signal we're looking at to see where interest rates go. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.